Good afternoon. I chose to write my comments down and hopefully will read them like I usually do. Those of you who know me know that without writing them down, I'll probably talk too much as I introduce us and get overly enthusiastic and perhaps bounce right off my seat. I want to thank everyone for joining us this afternoon. I'm Dr. Tammy Ellis-Robinson, an assistant professor at the University of Albany and also faculty director of our TUI Family Fellows Program, a scholarship and mentoring program to promote the diversification of teaching and mental health fields through an ecosystem of support and network development throughout the undergraduate and graduate experience at the University at Albany. And hi Taja, and I share all of that just to situate where the event's coming from and who our speakers are, our panelists are, because many of them are not only graduate students, but also the mentors in that program who've really been working on this initiative as well. It was initiated, this event, to address just one conversation in many that we'll be having around this topic. And it's an opportunity to speak to young people who are ready to move on to post-secondary options in pursuit of careers in these fields. Today, several of these graduate students have graciously agreed to serve on the panel and share with you their pathways to this moment and their passions that got them here. They will share who they are and address many of your questions. There were in fact so many important questions that I proposed to, you'll get an email from me, that I think we need to have a future event to discuss those that may or may not be completely in their purview, and because that would take us the rest of the evening. And since we haven't offered you food, I don't think it's fair to necessarily ask that. Before we jump into the panel and hopefully a few words of encouragement on this path, I would like to just invite our Dean Jason Lane of the School of Education at University of Albany to welcome you, followed by Ms. Jolene DeBrango, who's going to share a bit about the Take a Look at Teaching initiative. So Dean Lane.
Dr. Ellis-Robinson, thank you so much for the invitation to be here. And I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge, I think, the horrific events that are happening around the country right now, which is just a meaningful and important backdrop to this conversation. I sent a note out earlier today to our community, sort of expressing my thoughts on this, and I won't go through all of those, but simply to say that I don't have the words that can adequately, I think, address this situation, and by no means, as a white male of privilege, can I fully understand what everybody is going through in this situation right now. I don't have to fear where I jog or where I walk or where I go to school. Or where I live, frankly, and it's horrific that in this day and age we have to grapple with that in this society, and so many people do. But I'm incredibly proud of the work that's happening here and in the School of Education. As many of you know, a couple of years ago, we made a real commitment to diversifying the teacher education and the mental health workforces, and we did that because we felt that we needed to bring, we have a commitment to bring more diversity, people from more diverse backgrounds into those fields, so that they become role models for others to be successful. And we know that one of the best ways to confront so many of the injustices happening today is to make sure that we're promoting everybody to have equal opportunities of success. And we know countless research shows that the more that students of color have teachers of color, the more successful they are likely to be. And so this is something that has been a deep commitment of our School of Education, of our faculty. My thanks to Dr. Ellis-Robinson and so many others. My thanks here to the TUI fellows and the mentors who have really stepped up in this inaugural year and have provided amazing mentoring to our 25 initial fellows in this program. My thanks to Charlie Tui, who is here, who is one of our benefactors and a huge proponent of overcoming these issues that our communities are facing. But to say over the past year, I think we've made great partnerships working with NYSUT, with school districts. This is not a problem any of us can tackle alone. It's a problem, it's a situation that we have to collectively come together and support and address. And I'm so proud that we've been able to work with NYSUT, with teachers in our communities, with administrators in our communities, to find ways to bring more people from diverse backgrounds into teaching and mental health professions. And I am just so thrilled to have all of you here today as part of this conversation. This is part of the change that needs to happen in our community here in Albany and throughout the Capital Region, and just excited by your interest in these important professions, because these are the professions that change the world and make a world a better place. So Tammy asked me to be brief. I'm really difficult at doing that, but I just to say, listen, this is an important conversation, and thrilled that so many of you are here and with us. And just so that you all know, we're partners in this entire endeavor, and we'll be here for a long time to try to continue to fight the good fight and make sure we're advancing social justice in the ways we need to. So, Tammy, back to you. You're still on mute.
Yes, every meeting. I'd like to invite Jolene DeBrango to share a couple words before I dive into our panel introduction and panelists.
Thank you, Tammy. Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the New York State United Teachers, which is the teachers union that represents teachers, school-related professionals, and higher ed professionals, as well as healthcare workers around the state. We have 600,000 members, so if you are going to be entering the ranks of teaching or maybe even healthcare, we hope that you will join our NYSUT family one day. We would like to say how honored we are to partner with all of you on this incredibly important work. We are honored to be a part of this panel today, and this is an example of the successful collaboration between our statewide union, NYSUT, and our partners in higher education, the Albany chapter of the United University Professions. And we want to thank everyone at Albany for having us here. This collaboration is a part of NYSUT's broader initiative entitled Take a Look at Teaching, which aims to increase the number of students and career changers entering education careers and to improve education workforce diversity in New York State. Currently, we have a teacher shortage in New York State. And so a few years ago, we began this initiative as a way to talk positively in elevating the profession of teaching, as we do believe it is one of the most powerful professions that anyone can enter. The effects that you have on generations and generations of students and families is just simply incredible. But more importantly, and very important to this conversation today, we know that all students benefit from a diverse workforce. And so we want to increase the number of diverse teachers, school-related professionals, higher ed professionals, and healthcare workers, increase the diversity so that our communities can see themselves in the people that work with them, that they see as role models and that can have a positive influence on their lives. Right now, we have a confluence of events: the coronavirus pandemic, George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery's tragic death. Both the health crisis and these homicides force us to amplify our voices and end systemic racism in our schools and in our communities. As educators, we have the ability to harness the power we have collectively to utilize restorative and culturally diverse practices and to teach about bias. Given that so much will rest on your shoulders as educators or healthcare professionals, I would ask that we do all that we can to support and encourage the next generation of teachers and mental health professionals who will take on the dual role of being education leaders and change agents in their own communities. We have a lot of challenges ahead of us, but I'm confident that conversations like the one you're going to be having today will help us find solutions to those challenges and build relationships, strong relationships along the way. Your experiences and perspectives are so very valuable, and we appreciate being a part of the conversation today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jolene. Educators and mental health professionals exist in various settings to promote equitable outcomes for all people. At these tumultuous and trying times, staying on the path requires reified missions to uplift and bring change to a world rife with obstacles, yet still filled with goodness and righteousness. Our efforts situate that goodness and righteousness in the purview of the power structures and avenues that we can affect. And in your purviews to support them, hire them, to become them, we together disrupt the injustices that have long plagued our world and are currently erupting in our streets and in our hearts and in our minds. We can do this with the work that we have already started to support people on that journey to becoming educators and mental health professionals who will guide our treasures, our beloveds, our people on a path to their preferred outcomes and pursuits, to clear the pathways to their passions. On that note, I invite some of my favorite beloveds to share a little bit about who they are with you, in addition to those pathways and passions. So we'll dive right in to our panelists. First, let me introduce your name, and then if you could just share your current course of study and where you are on that path. First, we have Kwesi Burgess.
Good afternoon, Dr. Tammy Ellis-Robinson and Dr. Lane. And I also have to say good afternoon to NYSUT, who is part of, I am a NYSUT teacher, so thank you for the work you do. I am currently a doctoral student at the University of Albany. I just finished my coursework and I am embarking on planning and continuing my doctoral studies with towards my dissertation.
Thank you, Kwesi. Hillary Paredes.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Hillary. I am in the Mental Health Counseling Master's Program. I'm currently on my second year and I finished in December, so I'm super excited about that.
Thank you. I think I should just stay unmuted. Next, we have Taja Young.
Hello, everyone. My name is Taja, and I am a PhD student in the Educational Psychology and Methodology Division. I'm currently pursuing preparing for my comprehensive exams and also preparing my dissertation proposal. So hopefully within the next 2 years, I will be completely finished. So that's where I'm at right now. Thank you.
You will be. Next, we have Kristin Collins.
Okay, I unmuted it now. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Kristin. I'm in the Special Education and Literacy 2 program, and I just finished my first year, actually, and just started my summer classes. I plan to be finished by August of 2021.
Thank you, Kristin. Next, we have Denisse Ochoa.
Hi, everyone. I just finished my first year of my doctoral program in school psychology. So I plan to be a licensed psychologist in 5 years.
And finally, we have Naomi Downs.
Hi, everyone. I'm in my second year now of the Special Ed and Literacy 2 program.
And so we're going to dive into question number 2. I've got this swimming thing going with diving today. What led you to choose this career path? Feel free to go back as far in your history as you like. And we'll start with you, Naomi, on that one.
Oh, okay. So for me, I had a hard time choosing a career for a long time. And in the end, I just went back to think about all the jobs that I'd had. And I had a lot of summer camp jobs or after school programs. And it never really felt like work when I was with kids. And I just loved it so much. So I thought, why not take a career in education?
Awesome. Thank you. And Denisse? What you?
So similar to Naomi, I feel like for as long as I can remember, I've played that like helper role at home. I remember being a kid and acting like a family therapist and like sitting like my parents down and be like, you guys are fighting, let's talk about our feelings. And so it's just, I feel like something that's come with me. It's something that I've naturally been inclined to do for as long as I can remember.
Thank you. And Kristin.
Hi. So I was actually I went obviously from being a camper to a counselor in training to being a counselor. And I didn't know for a while until I actually got to school. And I couldn't figure out what I wanted to do. And I realized that I really enjoyed working with kids. And then I started teaching as a teaching assistant at Wildwood programs where I work with kids with autism. And I really loved working in special education and advocating for those kids and being able to say, they are people just like everybody else. They just understand the world in a different way that we don't have that advantage of understanding it that way. And I loved working with them. And then I found the Special Education Literacy 2 program, and it was like a kind of moment. And I got really lucky to be able to be in the program and to learn how to teach these kids. But I also really wanted to go into education and teaching because it wasn't until I got to college at my sophomore year that I had a teacher of color. And that's a lot of years to go through school without having one teacher of color. So to start that, and I want to go into elementary, so to start that in the elementary years and to show these kids hey, we're out here, and especially with everything going on right now, a lot of kids are not giving the information that's the truth. And I want to be able to go in and change that. And this new generation should have the right information. And I want to be a part of that.
Thank you, Kristin. And next, Taja.
Okay, for me, well, I grew up in a single parent home with my mother. And so she always instilled in me this passion for education. And she taught me that education basically is our savior from poverty. And so I always had that in me, that I had to do something where education is concerned. I didn't know what it was until I was about 18, 19 years old, where I worked as a teacher at a remedial school with children who were expelled, basically expelled from mainstream schools. And there were these remedial institutions that took them in and got them to the level that they needed to be at in order to go back to mainstream. And when I interacted with those students, I realized not only were they failing academically, but they themselves felt as if they were failures. And so I wanted to be a change agent, and so that started to fuel that passion in me for students. Also, having experienced, the loss of a lot of young men who had so much potential, lost to gun violence, gang membership, just prison. My own brother, he was a victim of gun violence. He lost his life at 19 years old. Last week, I lost yet another student. He was only 17 years old to gun violence. And so that continues to fuel my passion. My dissertation is really going to focus on Black boys and the miseducation of Black boys. So I really do have a passion for Black boys and men in general. And that's where it comes from.
Thank you, Taja. So much work to do. Hillary.
So similar to Denisse, I feel like I've always been that helper, but I didn't know exactly what route I wanted to take until I took an intro to counseling class at Albany, and then I think it was just a combination of the PhD student who was teaching it and then the things that we were learning, and I fell in love with it, and I haven't turned back since.
Nice. Thank you so much. So we have one more question that came from us to just let you know more about who the panel is. You can hear that they have really some very similar reasons, but some very passionate reasons for wanting to come to the field. The next question really is going to be about what options they see for careers as they finish their schooling. And then we're going to take a look at a lot of the questions that came in from all of our panelists, so keeping them on their toes. So Kwesi, I didn't even let you speak yet, did I? Sorry.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. So my story, I'm originally from Guyana in South America. And so my parents were first generation in America. In Guyana, there's not any job opportunities in terms of professional careers other than the doctors, lawyers, teachers, and firefighters, things like that. And coming to the United States, I was not privileged to be able to have people in my family that were of other career paths, engineers and professors and things like that. And I remember in my junior year of high school, I was given a health project where I needed to interview someone in the field that in a profession that I wanted to. And at that juncture of my life, I did not have many options. I had a mentor that was a lawyer, and I had my teachers. And although I had a really great mentor and I had a really good relationship, I didn't see myself as a lawyer, mainly because I did not think that I was that smart. I had this misconception of what lawyers were, really, really smart. And, and so I remember thinking about, what I can do with my life after high school. And I revert back to the subjects that I liked in high school. And math was one of the subjects that I really enjoyed. I wasn't the best at it, because I didn't get straight A's, but I didn't mind working towards it. And when I understood a problem, I was really excited. And so I remembered I interviewed my teacher, my math teacher, and her name is Karen. And it happens to be that another teacher that I was really close to in the school, also, her name was also Karen, two Black women. And I remember asking her different questions. She was also my track coach. And that allowed me to get very close to her and ask very, to me, I thought it was just important questions, but to her, it might have been trivial questions, and that opened up a light in how I see the world, how I view the world, how I view professions, and how I view teaching. And my senior year of high school, I was a part of a career explorations program where I took classes at the College of St. Rose, and I also spent time with a teacher in the elementary building who I'm still very close with. And that opportunity allowed me to see behind the scenes of what it means to be a teacher. And I was able to get a lot more of those questions answered. And I was also able to, once again, get different insight, a different perspective on a profession that I never thought I'd be able to do. And after that, I continued to engage in, the summer youth program where I worked at the Boys and Girls Club. And there was this one girl, I don't remember her name, but I remember her full name, but her first name was Deborah. She was a very challenging student and always getting into fights. And I remember just talking to her. And in talking to her, I would say, instead of fighting, you can talk to me, I'll handle it. And I took that as a very serious role, that if she was to come to me, that I would really need to address whatever concern she had. And over time, she started to come to me and express our frustration and why she was mad and who was bothering her. And that relationship, the trust that we built, facilitated, her growth and development. And so she was no longer just getting into fights every single day at the Boys and Girls Club. She actually started to come to me when she had issues, and that right there was my motivation. So when I went to Plattsburgh State, that was the experiences, that and my TA assistant position as a high school senior, those two experiences is what drove me throughout my undergrad career. Every class that I went into, I kept thinking about those experiences and building on those experiences and maintaining the relationship with that teacher that I'm still in contact with really helped me to get into the field and be able to understand the field and help me to realize why I want to be in education.
Wow, thank you, Kwesi, for sharing so much about your pathway. I know I said we were going to talk about what they're going to do next. Let's hold that for a second. One of the questions that one of our participants asked was, who inspired you to become? And they were asking to become teacher or whatever role. And I think Kwesi shared with us sort of how it came both from an individual teacher, it came from work with a student, and it came from himself and his own personal passion, staying kind of eyes on the focus of what made sense to him. But from our other panelists, if you would share with us if there's a who, and it can be you, but if there's a who that inspired you to pursue your current path. Maybe we'll start with you, Hillary.
I think for me, it's not just like one who, it's a collective who. My family is my biggest motivation. And I think coming from a minority household and not really having those conversations, but even though we didn't have those mental health conversations, they support me 100%. And they see how important it is to seek out mental health treatments and to be aware and to know what to look for. And so I think they're the ones pushing me forward and helping me with the journey.
Thank you, Hillary. Taja.
I have to say my mom. My mother has been my biggest motivator and also my inspiration. she just expects so much of me that I could not settle for mediocrity at all. I had to make sure that I become the best that I could ever be. And I think she just instilled that drive in me. You have to be great. You have to fulfill your potential on this earth before you die. You have to become the person that God intended for you to be on this earth. There is purpose in you. There's greatness in you. Those are the words that I was told at a young age. And so I felt like I had to be great no matter what. I didn't have any choice. And so that's really my inspiration. Along the way, I've met people who have inspired me. You, Dr. Tammy Ellis-Robinson, you have been a big inspiration as well. Dr. Andre has also been a big inspiration. But my mom, I think that's where the foundation comes from. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And I'm sure she's in your ear even right this moment as you're sharing those ideas. Kristin, and as you talk about your who, we have one of the questions really specific that is, what encouragement can you offer along with that to a young person like yourself who wants to become a teacher?
Oh,
So I gave you 2 questions.
So, who inspired me was like different kids that I met along the way. I mean, I have like teachers that I've worked with, and like teachers now, like one of the teachers that I actually work with at Wildwood has been a really big inspiration in terms of her teaching style and the way she just cares for the kids. But along the way, being in a classroom as a student myself, and being in classrooms as volunteers, and like just being around different kids really inspired me. And it's very close to Kwesi's story. I just didn't know how to approach it the way that you did. But like I see these kids struggling, or I see these kids that I know can do the work, but they struggle with different things. And I mean, I grew up with really bad anxiety, and I didn't know that until I got to college. So I would just have stomach aches, or I wouldn't understand why I couldn't sit in a room and take a test like everybody else. And there's little things that like, you just need somebody to kind of guide you through that. And to have a teacher that would have just asked me like, hey, what's going on, would have probably changed my entire career as a student. And I didn't have that. So my inspiration has really been working with different kids and just seeing like, hey, what's going on. And like, I mean, as I'm in the program, as I learn about different things, I learn like kids go through so many different traumas that we don't know about, and just giving them an ear and letting them know like, hey, I see you as a person. You're not just a student. You're not just a kid. I see you as a person, and I'm here to understand. Like, I may not understand your trauma, but I can listen to it and can say, okay, if this is how you feel this day, what can we do to kind of accommodate for that? What can I do to make you feel better? So this is a good experience for you, because learning should be a good experience. You should want to learn, want to get new knowledge, and you should always want to learn. Like people that leave school and like, oh, I'm so glad I left school. I'm so done with like learning. Like you learn something, you can learn something new every day. Like learning doesn't stop. It's that structured learning that really pushes kids away. And I want to change that. Like I don't want kids to feel like they come to school and they hate being there because they have so much anxiety about being in the classroom. You can do something about that as a teacher, especially as someone that's sitting in that power. So for other people that look like me that really want to get into this, it's challenging. I faced a challenge early in the year with a teacher who kind of just belittled my reason for wanting to teach and wanting to be in the classroom, which was really hard for me to take, but it also inspired me to say, okay, you can feel that way and that's fine, but that has nothing to do with me and my career. And the fact that there are teachers in there teaching Black and brown kids, and that's how they feel about my reason for teaching, was because there was nobody that looked like me, and that like offended him. And like you honestly just have to stick with it. I mean, grad school on its own for anybody is not easy. It's a whole different challenge to face because it's a whole different set of work you have to do and people you meet. But I'm in my cohort right now, I'm the only Black person. And that gets hard too, because you're sitting there, and I mean, even with all the issues going on right now, nobody in my cohort is talking about it. It's not like a discussion that we have, or it's not something that the professor is considering like, oh, hey, maybe we should, or take a break from school or something like that. Like I have things to do and you have to push through. I mean, everybody here, you go to work, you go to class, no matter what's going on in the world. And for these kids, they're going to grow up in a world and they're going to see like oh, there's a lot of people that don't look like me out here. There's a lot of people that don't look like me, but there's garbage men that look like me and janitor staff that look like me. And that's not the message I want to show kids. Like, you can be a teacher, you can be a principal, you can be so many things. And it's just, for me, this was so important to me because I didn't have that growing up. And I didn't have a teacher that I could say, hey, you look like me. I mean, we didn't read books from like Black authors or learn about different things that Black people did and invented. I learned that from Twitter when I grew up and was old enough to use Twitter and understood how it worked. So to give these kids that exposure is so important to me. I don't know if I answered the second question. I kind of got lost.
I think you know what? Twitter. It's all about Twitter for teacher.
Yeah, man. Honestly,
You did answer it. You did answer it because, Kristin, what I hear you saying is keep your eyes on the prize and do what you need to do, but remember who you are. And that will help you reach that goal. Thank you so much for sharing that piece of your journey. Next, Denisse, could you share with us maybe your who and maybe your a little bit of how for the next person?
Yeah, I feel like my eyes just like swelled up hearing Kristin talk right now. Like that, it's like bizarre how much that resonated with me. It was like, oh God, like that's like a shared lived experience. I think that I have a mix because Taja was talking about her mom, and I feel like there have been many times in my life where I have felt overwhelmed, like I want to quit, and like my biggest motivator is my mom because like she, just like Taja, like expects nothing but the best. And so being the first person in my entire family and extended family to ever go into higher education, there is a lot of pressure on me to find a way to always make it work and to, you know, to be the first, like I'm the first person in a doctoral program and now to be the first person to graduate a doctoral program. So there's no reason why I should, you know, look in any other direction, right? Like I need to stay strong and I need to keep going because now the family knows and I'm the example for the family. And so I think for me, like this, like, I don't know, it goes deeper than this, but maybe this like fear of disappointing my mother and how high her expectations are for me probably keeps me really motivated. But then I also feel like it was for me the fact that I never had a person of color as a teacher. I don't remember having any teacher who was a person of color at all from like K through 12. I have no memory of it. And I feel like the first time I ever saw a person of color as someone who was teaching me was in college. And I was in Brooklyn College. I was like shocked. I remember just being like, whoa, like folks exist. I didn't realize that, right? Like it just became so normal for me that I never even realized how not normal that is. And so it was, for me, actually, I became really involved in a youth group in Sunset Park in Brooklyn, and it's a predominantly Latinx community. And so I got really involved in this youth group there, and I realized that I liked the work that I was supposed to be like a youth, like the president of the youth group, as in like I had to make sure like meetings were being scheduled and things were happening on time, but I ended up finding myself doing like therapy with people, which is like probably totally unethical, but at the time I was like, you know, 16, 17, and I was like loving it. Like parents would come to me and they'd be like, look, my child is really struggling, like what do you think? And I was like, oh my God, I love this work, like how do I keep doing this? And so that kind of just influenced me even more. And yeah, I think I went on a tangent because I forgot what else was be answering, sorry.
I think that panel is synonymous for tangent, so it's good. Because you're sharing with us your experience, your pathway and your passion, and there are young people who will see, you know, those experiences where they felt like, wait, is this what I'm doing? And recognizing that it's a profession. When you were helping those people in your on the corner or breaking up that basketball fight, that might have been that you really were meant to be in the field supporting others professionally. Thank you so much, Denisse, for sharing your experience. It's really validating, I think, for all of us, you it included, to hear experiences with these similarities and to recognize that like there's normalcy in what felt like it wasn't what everyone else experienced to get where you are now. Naomi, if you would share a bit about your who and maybe your how.
So mine is similar to your guys's. I also, my whole education, have never had a teacher that looked like me. And now that I think about it, it's really surprising, and just what a difference we can make knowing all these things that like we grew up with and we didn't have, and how we can help students just knowing that. And I think it's awesome.
Awesome. Thank you, Naomi. So we had some more very specific questions from the group, but I will go back to that one that our panelists were expecting, which is what sort of opportunities do you see for yourselves as you complete your programs? And then we will go back to some of the other questions that have come in. But I invite you, participants in the audience, to feel free to send any other questions that you think of or ideas that come up for you to the chat while we're having these conversations. So that question was, and I'll go back and make sure I say it exactly the same. And that question was specifically, what options do you have for careers when you are finished with your schooling? And we'll start with Naomi.
Okay, so I'm in the Special Education and Literacy 2 program. So when I finish, and Kristin, we're both in the same program. So when we finish, we have the option to teach 1 through 6, either general education or special education or literacy. And it's really great because not a lot of teaching programs have the option to do 3 certifications. So it gives us the flexibility to choose what we really like and help students in that way.
Thank you. And Denisse.
Yeah, so I see myself, my end goal is that in a perfect world, and I hope this is the way it happens, I would love to open a community center. And so when I finish my program, I'm going to be a licensed psychologist. And so I would love to have a community center that is primarily focused on working with Latinx folks, whether it's youth, children, parents. And it doesn't even have to be Latinx, but I do want to be able to use like my Spanish language. I feel like there's a need for bilingual or multilingual mental health providers. And so my end goal would be to get as much experience as I can now within these next 5 years, so that I am able to provide, effective services that are actually like multiculturally sensitive or multiculturally considerate, that actually makes sense for the kind of people that I would love to work with, who were like me growing up, and who's maybe their parents don't speak any English, and X, Y, and Z. So that's the end goal. Fingers crossed.
Thank you. Fingers crossed.
Mm-hmm.
Kristin.
I mean, same as what Naomi had said, we have this super awesome, amazing program that gives us 3 certifications when we leave. So we leave with special education, general education, and literacy, and those can be combined in so many different ways. Like you can do just education, just literacy, just general ed, you could be a co-teacher. So because of all that, I feel like more secure in finding a job afterwards and like continuing with this career path. And then it also gives me the ability to branch out and do other things because I have those 3 things under my belt already. I don't have to like backtrack and try and get more. I can go further from there.
Awesome. Thank you. Taja.
Okay, so I could become a college professor, and that's something I would love to do. Also get involved in research, specifically with minority populations. I can become an author, become a consultant, maybe for schools, for the Department of Education, or policymakers even, because I would really like to see change happen. You know what I mean? I want to be a change agent. I just don't want to teach in a classroom. You know what I mean? I want to be in the community and make sure I see change. I also want to get involved in developing programs, special programs and interventions, not only for students, but also for teachers, for families, for communities. So that's about it.
Oh, is that it? That sounds great. I think that will keep you busy for sure. Next we have Hillary. I lost you on my screen, Hillary. Oh, there you are.
I'm right here. So I don't know. I mean, I have a lot of options after graduation. One of them is to pursue licensure. So that would take a few years, I'm going to say 2 years of seeing clients and then getting my license and, you know, keep doing that. Or I can get my PhD in something. I'm still not sure. It's an option. But definitely seeing clients is like the biggest thing for me. I want as much experience as I can get. And that is what I'm doing currently in my program, which is awesome. Especially like Denisse said, that we need those bilingual and multilingual counselors, especially in underprivileged areas. So looking forward to that as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Hillary. And we'll circle back to ask you more about your internship, I think, in just a moment. Kwesi.
Yes, so currently I am an elementary teacher, a 6th grade teacher. And a lot of, as I continue to learn more about education, my goals change. And so initially I just wanted to be a teacher, and then seeing and understanding the education, that change. And that's one of the reasons why I went back to school for my PhD. My PhD is in the experiences of Black boys. It's focused on the Black boys' literacy experiences. And so when I think about career in the future, I am entertaining the idea of a professor. In fact, I recently was offered an adjunct position at the College of St. Rose, which will allow me to be able to explore what that's like. I also am thinking about research in education, particularly around Black boys, their experiences, and how do we close the achievement gap of Black boys, because I think research has shown, and my experiences have shown, that they have, and we have, adverse experiences in schools, and that we are misunderstood. And so really using my position and my experience to be able to drive research, and I think that's something that I'm also entertaining. And more and more as I continue to understand education, and thinking about how do I impact change, I am also entertaining the idea of leadership, so superintendent of schools. And so, you know, I'm currently working closely with my superintendent and cabinet members to provide me that bird's eye view of what it looks like to make change from that platform. So there's a lot of options, but whatever I do is deeply, deeply rooted in my community, Black boys and Black and brown students of color and their experiences, and how do we improve the experience for them in schools.
Thank you. It's such important work. And so those of you, some of you are already and also on that path. Some of you have been on that path a really long time, and some of you may be joining. Make sure you write down these names that you are seeing on everyone's file so you can find their articles and join them as they make these changes and start these initiatives or whatever they're doing. We are a network. Our network starts here and now, if it hasn't already, in other ways that we've intersected. I want to turn now, and so anyone can answer these, but Denisse and Hillary, these might be more specific to your work. And that is what you're currently working on, specifically around mental health, and what you see as the work-life balance in that role, especially given what's going on with the current global health crisis.
Okay, so after finishing my master's, I worked for about 3 years as a school clinician in a middle school. And so my balance of work life and how to figure that out, I would say that coming right out of a master's program and working in a community that really had a lot of needs and were not getting the resources that they really needed, it kind of created an imbalance in my life. And so maybe Hillary, you can talk to this a little bit better, but I think for me, I'm just now, you know, at this point I'm about to be 30, and it's only now that I'm starting to learn how to actually incorporate self-care so that there is that balance. Because the reality is that when I first got out of my master's program and I was working in that school, I pretty much spent more hours of my week in the school building than I actually did at home. I was, you know, the first person there and the last person to leave. And so there was no work and life balance for me. And that was, it wasn't, I don't think I realized how much that comes from you, that you need to advocate for yourself. I don't know that I really realized that until I left. And I was impressed by the way that the person who came after me was able to advocate for herself and say, whoa, this is not a one-person job. This is a two-person job. You need to hire another school clinician. And so it wasn't until then that I realized how important that work-life balance is. So I don't know who asked that question, but I think it's a really important question to ask, because then what ends up happening is burnout, and which is why I ended up leaving. And so I took some time off, and now I'm back, you know, back in the field. But I do think work-life balance is really important. And Dr. Ellis-Robinson, there was another question, but I forgot what the second one.
Oh, well, the first part of the question was what you're working on.
Oh, so I'm in the school psychology program, which just means that I'm focused on problems, whether it's social, academic, behavioral, things that happen in the school building. But I'm part of research teams that are looking at, for example, it's not just school related. So I'm part of research teams that are looking at what kind of ELL interventions, English language learner interventions, are most effective with graduate level students. I'm also doing research that has to do with gender and what we can do as school psychologists to create more equity in schools and be more inclusive of people who might not, you know, fit the binary idea of gender. So my research is kind of mixed right now. It's not just specific to school psychology, which I think is also important to know, because maybe sometimes people feel like they just have to do one little area, but you can branch out and you can reach out to other people and work in different areas.
Thank you. Hillary?
Yeah, so right now I'm doing the internship portion of my program. So I am providing mental health services to people in the Albany area, which is a little frightening for me as I am, you know, super new at it, and then a global pandemic, and then all of the riots, the protests, and people are scared. So it's very hard to detach my own opinions and my experiences from the room and be there for that other person. And to touch on what Denisse was basically saying, a big thing with the work-life balance is boundaries and being able to say, like, no, I can't do that right now because I have this on my plate and I'm doing these other things, and these things are taking up my time at the moment, but I can get back to you on that. And that is something that I have learned along the way, and something that is extremely useful and prevents burnout. So it's just about advocating for yourself and making sure to take the time for yourself so that you get things done efficiently and still be sane, basically.
Thank you, Hillary. And I think that's advice not only to young people looking to come into this field, but to those of us already in the field, and probably every human being on this call needs to remember to self-advocate and self-care, particularly now, but always. So I have a question here, and maybe you know, any of you can address it, but it might be really specific to our teachers. And it is, how do you make sure you're seen as a proud, and they have it in quotes, Black teacher without becoming a radical educator that makes your administrators nervous or uncomfortable? You want that, Kwesi? Yeah.
Yes. So what a powerful question. And especially in our current climate, I think it's even more of an important question. And I would say to, the person that submitted that question, to all of us, the reality is, regardless of how you try not to be seen as a radical educator, you will be viewed as such. I've learned that my first year as a teacher, I made sure that, because I'm an African American man, and so I made sure that I stayed a certain distance away from the women that I work with. I made sure that my voice level was a certain way. I made sure that I didn't ruffle any feathers. I made sure that I dressed professional. I made sure that my hair was kept. I tried to ascribe to all of the things that I thought would make me not be radical or not be seen as radical. And what happened was the opposite. I had, in fact, if I can be personal with this group, at the end of my first year, I was asked to resign from my position. And it wasn't because of my work performance. It wasn't because of my relationship with my kids. It wasn't because of the relationship with my families. It was because I was seen as a threat. And I was only able to reach that point and understand what I went through my first year as a teacher retrospectively. Once I started to have more conversations with people and realize that I was seen as a threat, even though I tried everything in my power to not be seen as a radical Black educator. And so after that year, I made some deliberate decisions that I was going to walk in my truth. I was going to use my power and position and my own conviction to do well and do best for my kids and my families and my community. And once I was able to get to that place, I no longer stressed and worried whether or not I would be fired or whether or not I would be asked to leave or whether or not people liked me. It's because I was doing what I wanted to do and what I felt compelled and convicted to do in the interest of my children and my families and my community. So what I would say to you is find, and there's a growth process that comes with it. As a new teacher, you're inundated with so many things that you need to do, and you're nearsighted. You see what's in front of you, and as you move along in your career and your profession, you learn to become autonomous. You gain your own way of doing things, and you find your speed and your style. And when you get to that place, you're able to move the way that you want to move, the way you feel you need to move in the best interest of your children. What also is important too is my second year, I found an ally. I found someone that I could be open and honest with, someone that would try to understand me. And that gentleman was very well versed in unions and the school policy and the politics of education, and had many years of experience teaching. And I was open and honest with that gentleman from the inception. And I said, if there's something that you don't understand that I'm doing, if there is you want to know the reason and my rationale for doing certain things, if there's any conflict, come talk to me, right? Don't go spreading rumors and having ideations of me that may not be true. Have a conversation with me. And that relationship actually helped me to become, the teacher that I am today. I'm now able to lead the way that I feel convicted to do so for my kids, my family, and my community. So W. Du Bois talks about double consciousness. As a Black teacher, you will always have to worry about the moves that you make, the decisions you make, the way you dress, the way you're perceived, that white teachers do not. And so I think we have to find, especially in this age, and we have to find our way to be ourselves, be our true selves, regardless of what others perceive us to be.
Thank you so much, Kwesi. I want to snap to all that you're saying and offering, because it offers a big picture focus for, again, all of us. It's wonderful, and I hope you guys all see it too, that not only our young people can be inspired by your pathways and your passions, but people who maybe have been in the field even longer can also find that inspiration in the words and the experiences you share. We have only a few moments left, but I wanted to just get to a couple of points related specifically to entering that graduate school pursuit. And we have a few students who've asked, this question came up a couple times, what steps should I be taking to become? And we have a few who asked about teacher and a few who asked about mental health counselor. So if we can kind of tackle that, and then please know that we know who asked what, so we're actually going to send you responses specific to your questions if for those of you who we haven't gotten to them. But if you could just speak briefly, any of our panelists, to what steps to take on each of those paths. You can let me know you want to be the one by unmuting.
So I'm actually going to, I guess Kimberly and I are, I think, the mental health folks, right? Sorry, Hillary. Hillary, if you want to maybe talk about your path first, just because I feel like I'm a little further in, and then I can go after you.
Yeah, so the mental health counseling route is a bit shorter. So out of your bachelor's, you would go into a mental health counseling master's program, and that would be around 1.5 to 2 years. And then afterwards, you would have to do hours towards licensure. So those hours would roughly be around 2 years. So 2 and 2, 4. So 4 years, and then you can get your license, and then you'd be a licensed mental health counselor. But even before licensure, you can still practice. You can see clients, and that's what you're getting your hours. That's how you're getting your hours. And it's very important to make sure that the program you're applying to and are attending are accredited, so that you can be on track for licensure after graduation.
So similar to Hillary, my bachelor's, I had no idea what I wanted to do. So I ended up taking, I majored in Spanish language and literature because I knew I was good in that. And so it was afterwards that I was literally lost trying to figure it out. So just to be clear, even if you have a bachelor's degree that is not in psychology or is not in mental health, it doesn't mean that you can't apply or still go in the direction of mental health. So just keep that in mind. It doesn't limit you. There are some groups who are going to be more picky about it. But I ended up doing my master's degree in counseling from Penn State, which is a really great opportunity for me, because I ended up getting a full graduate assistantship to work with the Office of Multicultural Programs. And it was like everything that I was looking for and more. And I had just wonderful folks of color all around me all the time. And that wasn't in my program, it was at my assistantship. And that was amazing. And after I did that, you, like Hillary was saying, you have the option of getting license, I chose to not. I chose to go into schools, and so I got certified as a school. I forgot what New York State calls it, but I'm going to say school counselor. And there was actually a participant who asked a question about guidance counseling. This is my own biased response, but I do think guidance counseling, or the term guidance counselor, is outdated because most folks are not just guiding students. It's usually there's some kind of like mental health aspect involved in it. It's more than just academics nowadays. It's not just advising. And so I ended up going in the path of what would be considered guidance counseling, and surprisingly did not expect, like I thought I was going to be interested in doing academics, anything that had to do with the academic aspect, not therapy, and I ended up spending a lot of time doing individual and group therapy and loved it. And so I say that just to say that, if you were not to get your license after you get your mental health degree, it doesn't mean that you can't practice and you can't do work. There are other alternative paths that you can still take after that. And then if you decide that you want to become licensed as a psychologist, then that's another conversation. You're muted.
Thank you so much for our teaching path. If Kristin or Naomi, either of you would like to share what steps someone would need to take to become teachers.
So after the bachelor's, I had applied to the program. So to apply to the program, I followed what the requirements to apply to the program were. So that was like the recommendations and the GRE and all that stuff. So once you're in the program lasts, it's straight 2 years. Well, this program is because there's 3 certifications, so it's a full 2 years. So that's summer, you start in the summer, summer, fall, spring, and you end in the summer. So that's why I said I'll graduate in August of 2021. And you have to complete practicum hours, which are hours in, so some of the practicum hours are just working with the student. So it depends on which class you're in, like my literacy class, we just have to work with the student. And for the fall semester, we're supposed to be in a classroom starting student teaching. And I don't remember how many hours it is. It's closer to 7 something, but there's a certain amount of hours you have to complete, and you have to take the certification test, and then you're certified. And to teach in New York State, you have to have a master's. Other states don't have that requirement, but I know in New York, in like the really big states, New York, Chicago, I think the other one's Texas or something, I don't know. But in one of the big places, you have to have your master's in order to teach. Then you can go out and find like a job from there. Did I miss anything, Naomi?
No, I was just going to say to just try out as many different things as possible. When I did my undergrad, I had no idea what I wanted to do. And I thought I was going to do something in like business or marketing. And then through like volunteering and talking to people, and you just learn a lot about what you might like and what's interesting to you. And I just think to have an open mind and like be open to change, and just there's so many options that we can all do with our degrees. So
Absolutely.
Can I just add on to Kristin's thoughts or ideas? You can teach with a bachelor's in New York State, but after 5 years, you are required to have a master's.
Oh, okay. I knew there was something in there.
Yes. And then also there's some other requirements for certification, which includes the exams and also the TPA, which is a New York State requirement, where you would record yourself teaching and go through different questions and stages like that. So there's a few requirements to help you to get your initial certification. And your initial certification, after 4 years of teaching, then you're able to gain your professional certification. And that way you'll just have to keep up with professional development hours.
There's also a lot of different programs that you can go through. So like before I had gotten into, while I was still in my undergrad, I had looked at like Teach for America and City Year and stuff like that. So there's like different programs that'll lead you to teaching. So you could also like look at those. But as Naomi said, like look at everything. I mean, in my undergrad, I knew I wanted to teach, but there weren't really a lot of classes that were focused around teaching. So I did RSSW through UAlbany and decided to volunteer in a classroom just for some extra credit hours. And it put me in a place that I wanted to be. And that's like what started to really solidify, like, okay, I really want to go into teaching. I miss being in a classroom. So like there's a lot of options. And even as Kwesi said, you can teach for a few years before you get your master's. But if you're going to stay in New York, yes, you're going to need a master's.
And the University of Albany has actually added, unfortunately Kristin was done, but has added programming that would allow you to do a lot more in education through the human development major.
Yes, the human development, that's right.
And indeed our TUI Fellows program is here to support students who are interested in that pathway through a system of mentorship, scholarship, and all around love to help you get networked and be part of that within the field, part of the pursuit of making the change and being there for students. We are at time. It is 4:09. We are going to, all of you, like I said before, who sent in questions that are very specific, we will make sure you get answers and resources sent to you via the emails you shared. I want to thank everybody, all of our panelists, Dr. Lane, Jolene DeBrango, Carolyn Williams, Cheryl Dozier, who was manning the chat, and all of you who are here today. I want to continue to work with you. Please reach out to us. There's lots of young people who just need champions to help them become champions for others. And I know that all of us will work together to continue to do that. Thank you so much, and feel free to reach out with your ideas. I'll send you an email because we got to have something else where we talk about all those questions all together in the near future. Thank you, everybody.